going today. Love it. Monday, February 9th, another episode of All the Bases. How is everybody doing? Got Brother Line, your host. And I got producer Ben in the back. As always, we got a lot to talk about today. We are recording on a Monday night, so the day after the Super Bowl. That'll be first base, the primary thing in the sports world. We had a halftime show as well that we'll get into, and a lot of interesting stuff to come out of the Super Bowl. It wasn't a great game in general, but that'll be the first base that we will tackle. Second base will bring us to hoops because we definitely saw some really good games this week in New York specifically. So we'll get to that. Shortstop, we'll save shortstop certainly for that segment. Some layoffs this week in the sports world, and then third base can be a little interesting because Lindsey Vonn, we talked about her on episode 1 of All in the Bases, and she went through with it, and we'll talk about what ended up happening as a result of Lindsey Vonn going out there and competing in the Olympics on a torn ACL. And then we'll round third, get ready to head for home as we get ready for spring training as pitchers and catchers are reporting down to Port St. Lucie, Tampa, respectively, for the Yankees and the Mets. So exciting time of year for sure. Monday, February 9th, All the Bases, episode 3. I'm your host, Dan Bartels. Thank you all for being here. Let's start with the Super Bowl, right? Super Bowl treated us to an interesting game last night. The Seattle Seahawks defeat the New England Patriots by a score of 29-13. What a crazy game. In terms of just, you thought there would be more action. I looked at both these teams and I said, it's going to be a close game. Every time these two teams have played, I believe going back 7 years, it was like a margin of 4 points, respectively, between the two sides. So we knew it was going to be a tight one. This one was anything but. And as we said, 29-13, the Seahawks end up winning. The leading rusher was Kenneth Walker III. He had an unbelievable game, Super Bowl MVP. He really took over, and he was honestly the big reason why Seattle was able to become victorious in this one. He led with 135 rushing yards. His over-under, for the people who do bet, was only 70.5 going into this game. So if you bet the over on him, you were definitely pretty happy with your bet late last night. Ramondre Stevenson was the leading rusher for New England. He only had 23 points. His over-under was 48.5. So New England, just not a great game. In terms of interceptions, you saw Drake May's first interception of the two was atrocious. That was one of the worst throws you will see in a while, specifically from Drake May, but really from any quarterback on a stage like that. You heard Drake May after the game just saying he would love to see a lot of these same teams, these same players in the locker room back next year. Mike Vrabel, the heartbeat of that team. Mike Vrabel is a great coach, and to see what he's done with this Patriots team going worst to first in the NFL, I know it's a lot easier to do in the National Football League than it is in Major League Baseball, as an example, but Patriots, man, as a Giants fan, I hope that they can do what the Patriots did this year and obviously win the Super Bowl when it's all said and done. But we did see Jackson Smith and the Jigba also leave this game. He came back, concussion protocol. There was some interesting stuff in there as well. The first touchdown of this game, we talk about there was no action. Jake Myers, who was I believe he had 5 field goals last night for Seattle. A.J. Barner, the tight end for Seattle, was the first touchdown scorer in this game. It came in the beginning of the fourth quarter. So I know a big bet around Super Bowl week, because there's a lot of bets being placed this time of year for sure. It's the first touchdown of the game. And you usually expect that to happen in the first couple of minutes, usually the first drive, if we're being honest, not the fourth quarter. And that's what we saw last night. So A.J. Barner, the tight end for Seattle, was the one who got it done. Just crazy. JSN for Seattle was only held to 27 receiving yards. Stephon Diggs, 37 receiving yards. Hunter Henry, 31 receiving yards. Cooper Kupp, just 61. Not great numbers, guys, in total, but they were able to get it done. Sam Darnold, 19 of 38, 202 yards. He had a touchdown. He was only sacked once. He had a quarterback rating of 53, 74.7 overall. Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. There was an interesting moment for Julian Love. He was able to get his hands on a ball, and listen, he's a former Giant. A lot of respect for Julian Love, Notre Dame. Yeah, but it's it's not good seeing these guys on the other side of it. I know Jets fans seeing Sam Darnold were not too pleased last night. And just perceptually, we talked about it last episode. This is not a good look for the Jets seeing Sam Darnold win a Super Bowl. 8 years later, you don't have a quarterback. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So that's kind of what we're looking at with the Super Bowl. It was not a great game. That's kind of what it comes down to. We'll get to the halftime stuff, but Ben, what did you make of the game itself?
Yeah, I will preface this by saying I am a casual, basketball and baseball, those are my sports. But from what I saw, that wasn't the prettiest game. It was a defense, a really defense specific, defense heavy game. And but I think that was to Seattle's strength, and they just never really, from what I noticed, as a casual occasional watcher of the big football game on, the Patriots could just never find their offensive rhythm. They just could never get it going, and that's because it starts at the top. It starts with the quarterback leading the offense. Starts with Drake May, who, as you mentioned, Dan, he struggled, and that's why you cut off the head of the snake, and everything is kind of going to collapse from that point. But I think on kind of a larger, I guess, note of just the spirit of the game, not even the game itself. I think that the Seahawks exercised their demons from the 2015 Super Bowl, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that was played at MetLife. I believe that's correct. The Seahawks versus Patriots way back in February 2015. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was played at MetLife in New Jersey. I remember because I knew some people who went back when we were in middle school. But I remember how close that game was, how close the Seahawks came, and they fell short. And of course,
Butler interception at the goal line, man, crazy.
Yeah. So I think this was the appropriate kind of game for the Seahawks franchise, for the owner, for the fans overall. This is a different team, obviously, than the Russell Wilson led one from 11 or so years ago. But still, as a franchise, as an organization, they got it out of their system, so to speak. And I also just want to reiterate what you said about Sam Darnold. I mean, I'm very happy for him. I'm not even a Jets fan. We're both Giants fans. Me, probably follow the Giants a little bit less than you, but still, I admire, a New York quarterback, just how I admire someone, the Knicks. I admire Jalen Brunson, the New York point guard, because the quarterback, the point guard, those are the guys with the most pressure on them who are leading that offense, especially playing in a town like New York, where the spotlight is on you 24/7. Anyone who can succeed here is, it makes it that much more impressive, that much sweeter. That's why I think people revere Eli Manning so much, because he was, for all the metrics and intensive purposes, he wasn't like a super athletic or flashy QB, but he got the job done when it counted, and he was clutch. And he was the last, honestly, franchise player in New York City of a major franchise, I guess not including the Liberty, who won in 24, or because Liberty did win in 24. Besides that, the Giants in 2011, that was the last Super Bowl that they won with Eli Manning at the helm. So what I'm saying is, when you're a quarterback in New York, it's so difficult. All the odds are stacked up against you, or whatever team you're on in any sport. If you're at that really important position where you're de facto, or not even de facto, just in charge of leading the team, it really commands a certain respect. And I think Sam Darnold had a decent run when he was with the Jets. And I agree with you in that the Jets they've gone through so many quarterbacks. They went through Mark Sanchez, then they went through I don't know if this is the right chronological order, Geno Smith. They went through Ryan Fitzgerald. Yeah,
Sure.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, excuse me. Sorry about that, guys.
It's all
And
good.
um, they've kind of gone through this revolving door of quarterbacks. And I hate to say it, I hate to make it about the Jets, but I think that just shows the Seahawks show. They showed last night what a winning organization looks like consistently. Contending, coming up with a contending team once every decade that's going to be in the mix for a couple of years.
Sure. Really, really good team. Really, really well run team. They are going up for sale, as we talked about, but it's certainly not what you should be focusing on when you're thinking about what Mike McDonald has done with this team as the coach of the Seahawks on the ground, boots on the ground type stuff. We had boots on the ground. We talked about his name before we leave the Super Bowl segment. That Kenneth Walker, he was Super Bowl MVP, and for an interesting story because his father never saw him play in the NFL before last night. What a game to see your son play. I mean, just a crazy story. So in 2018, his final year of high school, Kenneth Walker had life-threatening blood clots in his lungs, and just not a good time, right? You're right before your senior year, you're an NFL prospect, and you want to be able to show that you still got it. Senior year is a big year for a lot of these players. We remember, and for him, he fought through it, and to see his father just last night being the first night that he sees his son play in the NFL. It's pretty cool. So very, very cool. NFL season is over. We will turn our sights to the draft in April and training camp over the summer and getting ready for the next year of football and hopefully do a better time in this town for the football locals because it's been abysmal. But, it's been a while for Sam Darnold. He was in this, mess of New York football for a while, and he's no longer seeing those ghosts anymore. So Sam Darnold certainly a Super Bowl champion. Now, Super Bowl also last night gave us something that was not just a game. We had a game within a game last night, and it took place during the halftime show. And I'm going to stay away from any of the topics that we would tend to kind of think about with this. I want to make it clear Bad Bunny makes great music. His music was very catchy last night, seeing that during the halftime show. I have no problems with Bad Bunny. I think in general, there is that perception of, hey, Super Bowl is more of an American thing, beer, hot dogs, wings, and to have a Spanish speaker do the halftime show, that can sit, wrong with some people. I'm not saying it sits wrong with us, but it has certainly been a topic out there. So I didn't have any problems last night with the halftime show personally, but I would have personally liked to have an English speaker doing the American halftime show. But in general, I don't care either way. Bad Bunny was very appreciative. You saw him hugging Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner. Very fortunate to have that opportunity. And at the end of the day, we're all about giving opportunities. So good that Bad Bunny got his last night. Also, before we get to your thoughts here, Ben, Turning Point USA also had their halftime show last night. They drew in millions of views. Not close to the Super Bowl in terms of ratings, but it was another stream for people to tune into if they wanted. So that was kind of cool to see as well. But Ben, what did you make of the halftime show with Bad Bunny?
Oh, well, I didn't see it, Dan. I was tuning into Kid Rock. No, I'm
There you go.
just kidding. Nothing against Kid Rock or Turning Point's halftime show. I know some people it got some viewership on their stream. So congrats for them regarding that. But yeah, one thing I will say is that I thought the visual presentation of the performance last night, I actually thought it was very well done. I kind of liked, the set pieces and it was trying to tell a story, kind of as Bad Bunny is weaving through I guess there were a bunch of bushes there, and then there was one part where he was on top of the telephone poles, and it was kind of just setting a landscape of maybe what he was trying to show is memories from his upbringing growing up in Puerto Rico. So I thought that was pretty well done. I'm actually I don't listen to Bad Bunny that much. I'm not a big reggaeton guy. I've got friends who are very big fans of Bad Bunny. I know Bad Bunny, funny enough, did a song with Travis Scott, who I know you like, Dan. But overall, I
Yeah,
don't
I
know his
do.
music too well. But I think that it was visually an impressive performance, even if you didn't like the music. So, credit to him, hats off to him. And also, sometimes I try to give every performer the benefit of the doubt in that it takes so much time and effort to prepare for this. It takes months on end. These guys, Bad Bunny, or in this case, Kendrick last year, they were probably getting ready for this, preparing for this, rehearsing for this, starting in, I would say, October of the previous year. So, even though last year I may have been
Mm-hmm.
critical, like with Kendrick, I couldn't hear, and I've listened to some Kendrick songs, some Kendrick albums, Kendrick Lamar. I couldn't hear Kendrick that well. I think that was more of an audio issue at the last year's Super Bowl back in where it was in New Orleans. But overall, it's like I try not to be super critical of this. It's like they're putting on a show. This is incredibly nerve wracking, I'm
Right.
sure. Can you imagine doing that? But I'm
No.
wondering who they're going to put in for next year. Maybe next year, Dan, they'll get, maybe as part of his attempted career comeback and rehabilitation, they'll get Kanye West back. No, but in all seriousness,
Oh, okay.
maybe somewhere down the road, Dan. I'm not kidding, but he would have to clean up his image a little bit more for that to be acceptable. I remember when Rihanna was doing her halftime show 3 years ago, there were rumors that Kanye was going to perform All of the Lights with her, but I think that was scrapped because at that time Kanye was, tough. He wasn't exactly, media friendly in terms of he was a controversial figure, still is, absolutely. So, but we'll see what happens. I'm interested to see what happens next year. But I thought all in all, an impressive visual performance. I didn't necessarily like the music or listen to music, but you got to give credit where credit is due. And as you said, opportunity is everything. He I think tried his best in that opportunity and made a lot of people happy with that performance.
Yeah, and I agree. It was very visually stimulating. I'm sorry for the YouTube audience that has not been very visually stimulating over the past couple of minutes, just trying to flip through all of this stuff. We will get this all figured out. Don't worry. But yes, Ben, I completely agree with you and what you said. And it was a cool performance. I'm not going to take away from that. Puerto Rico is part of America. We forget that too. Like it is, they deserve their moment in the sun, just like us. So it was cool to see that last night. But we'll move on from the football, the Bad Bunny, all of it. Now we get to second base. Second base brings us to hoops, and hoops had a really, really interesting run in this city. We'll start with the college hoops, and we got treated to a great game on Friday night at the Garden. St. John's, you can't talk about this team enough. Rick Pitino winning 81-72 over the number two at the time, Connecticut, number three, excuse me, at the time, Connecticut Huskies. They had an 18-game winning streak that was snapped at the Garden on Friday night. What a game. Zuby Ejiofor for this St. John's team. He led in every big statistical category, blocks, rebounding, points. I mean, this guy was all over the place. He's a passing big man. He really is a good complementary piece to a guy like Bryce Hopkins, who is another big man for this team, who was with Providence a couple years ago. And I like this team a lot. Dylan Darling, the young pup, hitting some big shots for St. John's down the stretch. I really, really like this team, and they had a really, really big win. This was the biggest Big East game of the year. I want to make that very clear. There's been some good games up until this point, but there has not been a game of this magnitude. And to see St. John's come out on the winning end, it was special. It is what this city has wanted. I don't know what the ceiling is for this St. John's team, if you want the truth. I don't think any of us do. We believe that this can be a really good team, but I don't know if we know that yet. And this was a convincing win, step in the right direction for them, but it's still not showing the full picture to me of St. John's, because there were some moments where UConn was creeping back, defensive breakdowns, just not a good performance through and through for St. John's. But they did it when it mattered most, and that's all that really matters. Quickly here, Rick Pitino ties Roy Williams for the third most wins in college basketball history with 903. He's trailing Jim Boeheim of Syracuse and Mike Krzyzewski of Duke. And Ben, I know you've been a big Duke fan your whole life, but what can you say about this St. John's team and that win on Friday over the Huskies?
Well, I just got to say, first off, that Rick Pitino has done such amazing things for St. John's culture. I think, as you noted, he's in really good company, in elite Hall of Fame level company in terms of college basketball coaches, and I love his general attitude that he brings to leading this program. Also, I mean, it's not that important at all, but it's kind of. I mean, we were even talking about this before this episode, Dan. The little things matter. The little things, all the little things add up. I love that Pitino wears suits during the games. I love it. It's so old school in the best way possible. I think it creates an atmosphere of professionalism that is sorely needed. Where since COVID, Dan, not just in college basketball but in the NBA, you used to have, before COVID, you had people, coaches, the official dress wear, the dress code was suit and tie, with nice shoes. And then once COVID hit, unfortunately, as part of a larger trend of society, everyone just dressed down like they were in pajamas. I'd turn on the Knicks game, I'd see Tibbs, God bless him. Tibbs wearing just the black Knicks shirt with like sweatpants, and that's it. It's like, what happened to the pizzazz, the aura, if you will? I kind of hate that term, but it's appropriate in this setting. And I think Pitino, that kind of stuff, it sounds silly, but it shows that he wants to bring his best, look his best, and he wants his team to perform, go all out, give all their effort when they're playing on the floor of Madison Square Garden. And that's what he's done. I think in the first season he was coaching the team, which was 23-24. And they played Fordham that year, if you remember that. And Dan, you were doing the halftime show at FUV when Fordham basketball played St. John's 2 years ago, and I think that was Pitino's inaugural season. But Pitino has led this organization, I think, in a consistent, contending direction. And it's just it's really great to see. I mean, as you said, Zuby, he had a great game, led all scorers, and I think it remains to be seen where this team is going to go into the tournament. Maybe I think the ceiling, well, the ceiling could be anything, but it could be as high as maybe a Sweet 16 experience. I think it's just it's really impressive, and exciting. So you have to tip your cap to Rick Pitino, and we'll see where they go from there. I mean, they actually. I was just about to mention that St. John's. I was just about to mention, Dan, that St. John's just beat Xavier in overtime, 87-82. So I don't know if you want to comment on that. And Zuby scored 25 points after 21 against UConn. So again, I was just saying that Pitino I think, is kind of really important part of this program, consistently competing for the tournament over the past few years and into the future. But that's a great win over Xavier in OT. And I think I was saying, Dan, I think this program can go as high as maybe Sweet 16 appearance or even Elite 8 appearance, depending on what the matchups are in March Madness, and also if they go on a hot streak. You never know, a Cinderella run. But let me know your thoughts, Dan, regarding because they just won as we were toward this against Xavier.
That's what caused me to lag out for a second, so I'm sorry about that. Yes, 80, a great win overtime over his son, Richard Pitino. Always likes getting those wins. Now he moves officially into that third place, passing Roy Williams, his 904th win. Good for Rick Pitino, and it's always nice to win against your family member, I'm sure. Very cool moment. Very cool moment. And St. John's continues to roll. The new AP poll was posted this morning, and they went from 22 to 17, and now another win in the books. I mean, this is where you start to see them climbing back up to that top 10 status. Do they reach top 10 status again? Remains to be seen. I mean, that gets very tricky. But if you can get into the top 15, I think they can live there. And then your point about the Sweet 16 is well noted for sure. So great win overall for St. John's, back-to-back wins now, and that's good to see. They're rolling, man, in general. Really like to see that. Let's move off second base. Before we do, let's talk quickly about the New York Knicks. And the New York Knicks, man, they had that tough loss to the Pistons. They come back, great win on Sunday, 12:30 against the Celtics. Ben, I'll defer to you on this one. I mean, Knicks are 9-1 in their last 10. They got Alvarado now. You saw Grand Theft Alvarado, nice steal. I believe it was on Jaylen Brown. So, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff why you have Grand Theft Alvarado here, Ben. So could you speak to him and where this Knicks team is going? And they got the Pacers coming up, which are not a good team this year.
Yes, luckily for Knicks fans, Pacers a little bit of a different matchup than they were last year, Dan. But I'll say this from what I saw in Boston yesterday, and that was for me. That was, I know some people listening will scoff at this, but that was my Super Bowl, Knicks Celtics in Boston on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
And I thought that Brunson, obviously, he was Jalen Brunson. He was a captain. He stepped up in the moment, coming off of a really rough game in Detroit, which was a lot more worrying of a matchup, of a game than this one. I think, Dan, this Knicks team, when healthy, even though Boston's been great this year with Jaylen Brown has been excellent this year because no Tatum. He's been doing it all himself. He's averaging like 29 points per game on dominant, efficient numbers, efficient shooting, playmaking, defense, doing it all. And, give credit to the Celtics for being essentially tied. They were before the game on Sunday, tied with the Knicks for second in the East. But this is a great win overall, Dan, and it's exactly what they needed. It's continuing those good vibes after the post-Cup slump, which was, that was just a really rough stretch. And I think part of that could be attributed to, obviously, there were injuries. There was Hart out for a little while. There was Deuce McBride out for a while. Now Deuce McBride's going to be out again, of course, probably until the start of the playoffs. But yes, which is that's a tough injury. That's a tough spot to deal with. But I think that the Knicks kind of overextended themselves playing into that cup. And they were kind of worn out from it. And because the cup that wasn't even the NBA Cup, if you didn't know this, Dan, it doesn't count on the list of NBA games. It's like an extra game. It doesn't count for the record. So like when the Knicks won the cup championship, that didn't count towards the record. Neither, I believe, did the semifinal game of the cup, the game before the cup. I don't think that counted towards their record either. So again, they won the cup, which is great for team confidence, and that was definitely, especially if you're hoping the team hosts a Larry O'Brien Trophy, if not this season, then the season after. That was kind of like a little hors d'oeuvre for the potential meal coming up. But yeah, post-cup slump throughout December into January, and then they really pick things up after around 2 weeks ago, and they've gone 9-1 in their last 10, as you said. And the only concerning loss in that stretch, Dan, was the Pistons game. And that's why I'll say a player like Jose Alvarado, who was not playing in that Pistons game, he is going to be very useful, very helpful, sorely needed in a potential matchup against the Detroit Pistons, because that team is physical. They are defensively intense. They are going to try to get Brunson banged up as much as they can because they have some real. They have a score to settle with Jalen Brunson, to say the least. We saw him knock down that three after crossing over. I think that was Johnson. Yeah, Johnson. And just knocking down the three, sealing the series. We watched that at your place. It was electric moment. So Detroit has been very impressive this year. I think that's going to be the toughest matchup coming out of the East, is just their sheer physicality, their defense, and also, when you look at, as compared to last year, they've gotten even better. Last year they were like a 6 seed, and this time they're first in the East, and they're significantly ahead of the Knicks right now. So I think that yesterday was really encouraging, Dan, and it was a great quality win, especially holding them under 90 points, the 89 points. Dan, did you know that the last time the Knicks did that to the Boston Celtics, or excuse me, the last time that happened to the Boston Celtics where they scored under 90, that was Game 6 where they lost to the Knicks in the Eastern Conference semifinals last year. Yeah. Wow. So I think this Boston team is a great team, and this could definitely be, if they face them in the playoffs this year, that could be a series. But I have confidence that the Knicks could come out on top. I have confidence in saying that. I don't have confidence in saying that with a Pistons matchup, Dan. And I think that's where you'll have a guy like Alvarado on the defensive end making irritating Detroit and kind of picking their pocket at opportune moments where Brunson's going to go down and score in transition, or that defense into transition, those kind of moments. Jose Alvarado is really going to help with that. But I think yesterday's one, a quality win, encouraging. Pistons game, that should be an easy win, especially we'll see the status of OG, because again, this win yesterday against the Celtics, Dan, that was with no Anunoby. And no McBride, of course, either.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take that
game too. No Cat.
Yeah. So I think, but when I look at the Pistons led by Cade Cunningham, who's had a great year this year, if you're a Knicks fan, if you're part of the Knicks organization, you got to be a little bit wary. You got to be a little nervous when going up against Detroit, especially if the Knicks are facing them and Detroit has home court advantage. That's going to be a tough series. I'm just going to say that. I'm not saying that it's all doom and gloom, but that is going to be a real challenge.
Yeah, no doubt. And the only thing I'd say with the Celtics, if they get Jason Tatum back, by the stroke of luck, that they can have that happen, they could be a threat. But that's an outside looking in thing. I'm not so sure that'll be the case. We do have the NBA All-Star break coming up too. That should be exciting. Always a fun time of year. So we'll cover that probably on the next episode or two of All the Bases. And listen, 3-point shooting contest has always been close to my heart. I love watching that. So maybe we could look back at some other past, specifically 3-point contest, dunk contest too. Obi Toppin here in New York, Jericho Sims here in New York. We could look back at some other interesting dunk contests, All-Star Weekend type events. But honestly, a lot of those All-Star Weekend type events, they've gotten corroded. People don't care about them as much. The All-Star game, they don't play defense and things of that nature. So we'll have time to get into all of that. I wanted to take the time, as we stop at our shortstop segment, the Washington Post this week laid off 300 journalists, about 30% of their overall working force. It is just such a sad story. Couple of things with this. I work in print media, and to see, I didn't know anyone personally at the Washington Post, but a lot of people that work alongside me worked with a lot of these people for many, many years and knew them on personal levels. It's not a fun thing to talk about. This is the shortstop segment because we're going to have to stop short, because I don't want to have to talk about this longer than I have to. But the state of the business, it's not a good one. And I get people don't read the newspaper. I'm well aware. Gen Z generation that Ben and I are from, people don't read newspaper. Ben, when was the last time you saw a 20-year-old reading a newspaper? You haven't, probably ever. So, right? And I'll answer it for you. It's sad to see, and I wish them all the best. I know they're keeping a skeleton crew to have sports features and stuff of that nature, so at least they're getting some content out there. But you're not sending Washington Nationals beat writers to spring training. That was kind of the first ripple in the whole thing of this is not good. Jeff Bezos bought the paper, and he's just kind of driven it into the ground, if we want the truth. So I wish them all the best. I hope they can all find successful jobs somewhere else in the industry. And yeah, that's just kind of our shortstop segment on the Washington Post, dismantling their sports section this week. Very sad, Ben.
Yeah, Dan, it's I tell you this all the time. It's a miracle in and of itself to be working in this industry with a full-time role at a big name. We're especially blessed, in such a competitive market, in such a competitive city, New York,
Mm-hmm.
to be working in this field. And my heart goes out to those who were affected by these layoffs. I mean, I'm no stranger to being affected by layoffs, being laid off. I was laid off by Odyssey, the parent company at WFAN, as well as many of my colleagues, people that from Fordham, Dan, who I worked with, Chris Persianen, Evan Harkin, Julia Moss. And it's just it's a different industry now than when it was even 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you still had a lot of people reading newspapers, and people still read the news, I might add, but they do it in a way that's, scrolling on X or scrolling on their For You page for the news, or some people, they even have the New York Times app or the Wall Street Journal app or the Newsday app or the Washington Post app or the New York Post app.
Hey,
where you're working. But it says something that a lot of the media environment nowadays is just driven by instant attention. Who's going to get the quickest instant? You have my attention span for longer than a few seconds. I mean, I've even seen it myself, Dan, when sometimes just in my own personal experiences, when let's say I'm showing a friend a YouTube video that I thought was funny, or a highlight or something like that, or even a TikTok video. And let's say it's taking like 5 seconds to get to the good part where I want to show them, or the something that's funny, or even something cool that happened in NBA game or MLB game, what have you. And let's say it takes like a buildup of like 5 to 10 seconds to get to that moment you want to show them. Sometimes your friend or even a family member, they've lost interest by the 5 seconds or 10 seconds that it's going in. Like I remember, Dan, I was showing my friend Jeremy, who of course, I was showing him this really funny compilation of Jody Mack from WFAN, who also works down at WIP. He's down
who you produced for, might I add.
Yes, I also, yes. I produced for the esteemed Jody Mack. Great broadcaster, great radio voice, very funny, just amazing entertainer. Seriously, I mean that in the most sure terms that he is a giant in sports radio broadcasting. But anyway, my point is that I was showing our friend Jeremy, I was showing him a funny clip of Jody Mack, and it basically was taking the host, Damon Amendola. You probably heard of him, Dan. He used to work at Infinity. That now he's at Sirius on Mad Dog. But DA, as people call him, apparently DA was taking like 30 seconds to introduce and talk about Jody Mack's funny noises that he makes sometimes during the show. And when I'm showing Jeremy this, he can't stay still for those 30 seconds. And so my point, I'm not trying to rip on our friend here, but my point is that it's a different sort of media environment's a great term, but I'd almost call it like an information economy too. Like it's kind of a weird term, but maybe I just came up with that. But other people smarter than me have probably used that term. But it's a different world where it's not so quaint, where you just have your sports writing newsroom, and then you have your whole batch of reporters that you can send to the game. I mean, now because everything with the job market, it's so tight, and a lot of these CEOs feel that they're losing money or giving away too much money by having these people on payroll. I guess in Jeff Bezos's case, he's got plenty of money. And again, I'm not against capitalism, but Jeff Bezos got plenty of money. The Post didn't have to lay off these people, Dan. Like Jeff Bezos could have had these people funded through the Washington Post for an indefinite amount of time. And Chris Persianen said the same thing to me about Odyssey and WFAN. Now, I'm not going to say anything bad about the place I used to work at, of course, but I think the CEOs who run these companies, who run these media outlets, Dan, they can keep these people if they really wanted to. And instead they're just, axing them off and putting them out in the wilderness where, God knows where they'll end up. Hopefully, we pray that they'll succeed in this industry. But it's just it's a heartless time to be working in sports media, and that's also because what drives attention is engagement, and a lot of engagement nowadays, unfortunately, is sports betting, and which we do not talk about on this show. Thank God.
Yeah.
Sports betting, quick outrage clips, TikToks, all of that type of stuff. That is the direction things are going. And someone who's a really good sports writer who does great articles, those kind of people are few and far between nowadays, because not that we don't have the amount of talent. We got plenty of great writers in America, young writers, but is that what the general population, especially Gen Z, do they want to be reading those articles? And it's kind of it's a sobering thought when you think about that answer. Is no, people don't want to be reading an article in the daily newspaper about their favorite team anymore. They want to see the highlights. They want to see the TikToks. They want to see the crazy clip from Stephen A. Smith, who's very talented, of course, but people want the instant. And that's just the way it is nowadays, Dan.
It's sad to see, Ben, but it's very true. It's the world we live in, and I feel bad for the Washington Post. I feel bad for everybody involved. And it's not going to be the last paper that we see close its sports section. We saw the Times kind of cut a little bit in the past. We've seen this popping up, and it's scary. I mean, I'm fortunate to work at a place that is expanding in 26 and not downsizing in 26, but there's no security long term. It's a very interesting to see. And I always say you have to develop with the times. You have to innovate. You have to find what works. And a lot of that, those social clips you talk about, put out a social clip and make sure that opening hook, you got to be pretty interesting, because if not, like you said, guys like Jeremy, they're just going to tune out. I don't need to wait 15 seconds when 2 seconds I can be lured into the video. So a lot of it is adapting to the times, knowing what works. And for the Washington Post, unfortunately, I think they're going to have to find other ways of going about their business. But that's the shortstop segment. Wanted to quickly stop at the Washington Post and spread our condolences to them. Let's go to the final base here. We have 2 more bases. We're going to round third, get ready for home. Lindsey Vonn rounded third, and she got ready for rounding home, and she did not make it home, unfortunately. We talked about Lindsey Vonn, and I'm going to share this on my screen. This was her statement on Instagram today. So quickly, before we get into any of that, Lindsey Vonn went out there and did what we kind of didn't want her to do, and that was go out there and compete. Now, I don't think it's very smart for her to do this. We talked about that. It's not a wise thing to go out there without a torn ACL and go and compete. But she said she's going to do it, and she did. Now, let's set the stage, because we haven't been with you guys since Thursday night when we left off. It's Monday night. Friday and Saturday, she had 2 training sessions leading up to her Sunday event. Friday went well. No complaints on her training session. There was video of it and everything. She looked pretty good, And then Saturday, everybody holding their breath. Saturday morning, what's going to happen with Lindsey Vonn? And all this stuff happens in the morning because they're ahead of us, so we get kind of this news earlier. Training went well. Saturday was good. She's ready to compete. And then next thing you know, Sunday comes around. She comes around the curve 13 seconds into her event, and she crashes. She has to be airlifted off of the event, the alpine skiing event. The 41-year-old, she didn't really have an ACL. She went out there with very little in her knee, and she gave it her all. And this was her statement on Instagram today. Just kind of everybody hoping to hear from her, and they did hear. Here's Lindsey Vonn. So here we go. Perfect. Perfect. Statement from Lindsey Vonn. Yesterday, my Olympic dream did not finish the way I dreamt it would. It wasn't a storybook ending or a fairy tale. It was just life. I dared to dream, and I had worked so hard to achieve it. Because in downskill ski racing, the difference between a strategic line and a catastrophic injury can be as small as 5 inches. I was simply 5 inches too tight on my line when my right arm hooked inside of the gate. You could see the picture she included there, twisting me and resulting in my crash. My ACL and past injuries had nothing to do with my crash whatsoever. That I tend to agree, right? I can't sit here and disagree with the most decorated alpine skier of all time and what she feels went wrong. But it wasn't smart. That's the issue I have. It was not smart. You could say it wasn't the ACL. I could play basketball on a broken ankle, and I could roll my ankle and say it wasn't because I had a broken ankle to begin with. But it's not smart to go out there with injured parts of your body. But I digress on that. Unfortunately, I sustained a complex tibia fracture that is currently stable but will require multiple surgeries to fix properly. While yesterday did not end the way I had hoped, and despite the intense physical pain it caused, I have no regrets. Standing in the starting gate yesterday was an incredible feeling that I will never forget. Knowing I stood there having a chance to win was a victory in and of itself. I also knew that racing was a risk. It always was and always will be an incredibly dangerous sport. And similar to ski racing, we take risks in life. We dream, we love, we jump, and sometimes we fall. Sometimes our hearts are broken. Sometimes we don't achieve the dreams we know we could have. But that is also the beauty of life. We can try. And she kind of finishes up. I tried, I dreamt, I jumped. Lindsey Vonn. Not great. This is not good for her. We also heard from her father. This is courtesy of the New York Post. Lindsey Vonn's dad said this should be the end of her career. In a world that has seen the last of Lindsey Vonn as long as her father has a say, her father, Alan Kildo, told the Associated Press that the decorated U.S. skier will no longer race if he has any influence over what will be her decision. So now you have the dad saying these things. You have Lindsey Vonn now injured, multiple surgeries, not a good scene for her. Yeah, just tragic. I don't know how else to put it, Ben. I don't really know what else to say. Just pray for Lindsey Vonn, and you have her own father saying this should be the end of her career. Do you think Lindsey Vonn listens, or do you think that the emotion and how good she's been is just going to triumph everything else, and she's going to want to compete itching again?
You know, I hate to say it, Dan, but sometimes the mind takes precedent over the heart in these kind of situations where your heart wants to do it. In your soul, you want to get out there and get back on the horse, so to speak. But I think that the wise decision, probably most likely, and unfortunately, take no pleasure in saying this, the wise decision would be to listen to her dad on regarding this,
Right.
because God forbid, let's say she did rehab, she got her surgery, and was out there for the next Winter Olympics in when would that be? That would be
28 in LA.
Well, that's Summer Olympics.
32 in Sochi?
Or 2030.
30.
Let's see. I'm actually curious. Let's see where the 2030 Winter Olympics are. 2030 Winter Olympics. So that's
Alps.
French Alps.
Wow.
Which is right nearby, so not so far away from Milan.
Yeah.
But I will say she's had a great career. I mean, just looking at her resume, so to speak, she's won 4 World Cup overall championships, not to be confused with the football/soccer World Cup, of course. She's won 4 World Cup overall championships with titles in 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2012. And she won the gold medal in downhill skiing at the 2010 Winter Olympics. That was the first one for an American woman. She also won a record 8 World Cup season titles in downhill discipline from 2008 to 2013, 2015, and 2016. and she's really just
Yeah,
had
she's the most decorated for a reason, Ben.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I think, and she's 41. It's kind of incredible that she was doing this whole feat at getting injured on the slopes, tearing that ACL, and then trying to go back out there at 41. I mean, it's one thing that I feel like to do that in your early to mid 20s, but at 41, I mean, it's kind of I was kind of incredulous at the fact, Dan, that she was even attempting to do this. I mean, usually from what I think, it's like if you were trying to train while still having a torn ACL, wouldn't you be screaming in agony? Wouldn't you like need to be in a
Sure.
wheelchair? And that's what I was saying in the first episode. I think it's just kind of incredible. And I think sometimes you go out with a bang, and she'll be remembered as someone who's not only had a great career, but even towards the end of her career, if this is it, which if she takes her father's advice, it will be. She'll be known as someone who didn't want to go gently into that dark night, as quoting a poem. And she really she put it she in the expression in basketball terms, she put it all out there on the court, or she left it all out in the field.
Yeah.
And credit to her for doing that. I don't know if I'm not a professional skier. I've gone skiing a couple of times. But if I had torn, even if I had like minorly sprain something while on the slopes, I would not be risking anything. And this woman, she really she wanted to be bold, and unfortunately it ended in a way that was certainly unpleasant, and nobody wanted to see that. But I think she's going to be remembered for the having the guts, having the wherewithal to even attempt to do this. And so I say I tip my cap to Lindsey Vonn, and respect.
I completely agree, Ben. I takes a lot to be an Olympian, and it's a different state of mind. You dedicate your whole life to be in this position. It's tough to put yourself in Lindsey Vonn's position. She just wanted to compete clearly, and that triumphed everything in a lot of respect, as you said, for someone that's willing to sacrifice themselves in the literal sense that she did. So we'll keep tabs on this. This will be an all of the bases story that we will follow. I think we've done a good job laying out the whole Lindsey Vonn stuff. It's very interesting to us. This is a sports story that is kind of a life story, and it just is a personal story too to all of us. We don't have any excuses, right? We have 2 working ACLs, so that puts it into perspective for sure. Let's keep it moving. Let's round third. Let's get ready for home here on episode 3 of All in the Bases. Thank you all for being here. Make sure to like and subscribe. We have some baseball coming up. We have some interesting stuff when it comes to baseball, and a little New York state of mind here. And just wanted to talk about the Mets and the Yankees quick as we get ready for spring training, right? This can be very brief because we're going to have a lot of time to cover spring training. We're sitting here on February 9th, the day after the Super Bowl. I made a statement yesterday on X, and a lot of people definitely agreed with it, where, hey, tomorrow is the first day of the baseball season in a lot of respects. Like, it's nice to have football. That'll always be, unfortunately, the main drawer when it comes to sports in this country. Hot take, I think baseball will get back to being America's pastime, and like it was.
Agree.
I think
Agree.
I think baseball is moving in a good direction. Joey Votto talked about it this week, where baseball's a good place. You can check your phone. You can do all the things that kind of Gen Z, as we've talked about on this episode, the attention spans, that all plays into baseball. And it's a really cool, great time of year. Weather's getting nice again. We've been living in the Northeast where it's been brutal.
Oh,
past,
don't even get us started. Don't even get us started.
Yeah. So now we're getting ready for baseball. It's an exciting time of year. Pitchers and catchers have reported down to Tampa and Port St. Lucie. I just want to quickly give a little bit on both teams and then give Ben's points on both teams, and we'll get out of here. I think the Mets are going to be a very good team. We're going to break it down as we get closer to spring training, who's really important to this team, but adding Freddie Peralta is huge at the top of this rotation for the Mets. having Nolan McLean right behind him, that is going to be huge for them. Great 1-2 punch. Clay Holmes, really excited to see him. Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, still wild cards, but having those three top pitchers, David Peterson in the mix as well. Mets rotation might not be as bad as people think, and I think their offense too with Juan Soto and adding Luis Robert, Carson Bench, young kid, left field, could break camp. So we'll see. That's all spring training stuff for the Mets. Does Carson Bench break camp? Early videos that you're seeing with Clay Holmes pitching, he looks good. So I know it's just, getting going. It's nothing too groundbreaking, but yeah, excited to watch the Mets play this year for sure. I think they're going to be a very, very good team. And then the Yankees, we'll get into the Yankees as the all season, continues and spring training ramps up, but it all comes down to Aaron Judge. How can this guy, can he stay healthy? When does Garrett Cole come back? It feels like June could be the timeline for Garrett Cole. So you're going to have some of these other pitchers stepping up. Yankees have one of the best rotations in baseball, if not the best rotation in baseball when healthy. But to begin the year, they're not going to be healthy. So there's some question marks there. But if you get Aaron Judge doing his thing, you get some of these young kids. You got Cody Bellinger back in the mix. I think the Yankees will be that 90-plus win team. I think it's going to be two really good baseball teams in this town. And it's been a while since we've said that. I know it feels like every year the expectations are always great, but reality has not met that. Really, for the Yankees, it has, going to the World Series. Yeah, sure. But the Mets have failed, if you want the truth, in terms of expectations. So, yeah, we'll dive into this more as we get more information on spring training. There hasn't really been much news yet, but that's where our heart is on all the bases, and I'm sure a lot of you guys at home as well. So we'll probably start a lot of these episodes moving forward with baseball as first base now that we're done with football. And yeah, I know you guys are very excited about that. But Ben, what do you just, quick little Spark Notes version here with the Mets Yankees and what their seasons may hold as we get ready for the spring training?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of optimism for this Mets team after, as you know all too well, Dan, as you covered this team throughout these past few years and last year, that was an electric start up until mid-June. And it's funny, I was at the game where everything went south from there. June 13th, I believe it was. It was a day game where Senga was pitching, gets injured halfway through the game. I think it was the fourth or fifth inning. And I had a discussion with another Mets fan that everything changed in Citi Field that day. The atmosphere just it put a dark cloud over the season. Just something. It's like you went into another dimension. And from that point on, that Mets season was just, I hate to say it was a catastrophe. It was 2007 levels of just not living up to what the expectations were coming out of 2024, which was an amazing season, punched above their weight, got to the NLCS, and people were expecting NLCS. How about WS for 2025? And they didn't even so much as sniff the wild card last year. So I think, yeah. And then with the offseason, they were really, as you were noting, Dan, they really wanted to get Kyle Tucker. They struck out on that. No one really saw, or at least I didn't see it coming. No one saw the Nimmo trade coming. And also people did not see, or actually some people saw it, but it was still a shock to the system to see Pete Alonso leave and become a Baltimore Oriole. And I think all of those compounded upon one another, Dan. They really soured the mood of a lot of Mets fans. They thought, Steve Cohen, David Stearns, what are you guys doing? And then they turned things around. They got Bo Bichette. They traded. They made a trade for Peralta, which was a really smart move. And they've shored up that rotation a little bit. And then when you look at the starting lineup, you've got Alvarez at catcher, who's had some issues staying healthy. I think we can agree on that. But still, when he is healthy, I think he can definitely be a really, really important bat in this lineup. And then Marcus Semien, at second base, he's one of the new acquisitions out of the Nimmo trade coming from Texas. One thing I like about him is he seems very durable, not so injury prone. He's played in all 162 games in the season 3 times. Now he is 35 now, so not guaranteeing that it's going to happen this year, but he seems like a defensive anchor, almost a veteran for this team, a good presence in the clubhouse. So I think that's good. Lindor had a solid season last year.
Yeah.
And again, he's pretty durable player, even though he's had some injury scares. And we're going to expect, the usual production out of him this year. And then Bo Bichette at third, which was, a great signing. I guess some people would say he's a natural shortstop. But still, I mean, I think he's going to adjust to third base. And, it's just, I think that was a really good signing. And it's funny. I remember random memory I have is one of our colleagues from FUV at Fordham, Jack Warner, he got the chance to interview Bo Bichette after a Mets Blue Jays game back in June of 2023. I just remember that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And seemed like a very nice gentleman. I think fans are going to like him as a part of this ball club and what he provides offensively, but also, I think he'll be adequate on the defensive end at third. I think, again, I could be wrong. And then when you look at the outfield, I think Benj is the big question, the question mark. Where does he fit if they bring him up? The number 2 prospect, of course. What's the outfield going to look like for the starters? Is it for the starting lineup? Is it going to be Soto, Lewis Robert,
Soto in right, Robert in center, and then Benj in left?
Yeah. And then where does that leave Beatty as a platoon kind of player? Where do you see that? What do you see? That's a good question just in general. What do you see happening with Brett Beatty this season?
I think he's DH. I think he becomes a guy who you can put in left, you can put it second, you can put it third, you could put it first on a good day. But in general, he's a DH. There's just no starting spot for Brett Beatty right now. Now, if you're going to tell me Carson Bench needs a month, and you got to see how he looks in AAA, and spring training didn't really show you much. Okay, you throw Beatty in left for March and April and have Tyrone Taylor help him out, and then Benj is ready by the end of May. Okay, that makes sense. But right now, yeah, Brett Beatty's just for DH. He's honestly right there with Mark Vientos. I hate that the Mets continue to pair these guys together where you never let the one just break off from the other.
Yeah.
It feels like we're always hamstringing one.
And then that hinders, in my opinion, Dan, when they do that hinders their development.
Sure.
Think about way back in the day in the late 2010s, Dan, when they'd have Dominic Smith and then Alonso. I think they would like trade. They would go on and off, or especially Dominic Smith at first base.
Sure. Who's the guy? Pete had to win a spot from him.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's interesting, Ben. We'll continue to cover the Mets, and then quickly on the Yankees. Do you think they're going to have a good year?
They've done less knowledgeable about them because they're not my team, and I haven't covered them. But I think that they re-signed Bellinger, which unfortunately for Mets fans and the organization, much to Mets fans' chagrin, the Yankees re-signed Bellinger.
That's got to get for the Mets,
yeah. They also retained Trent Grisham, and they've added pitching depth. They've got Ryan Weathers, Paul Blackburn, Ryan Yarbrough, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that, as I said, there's no reason why the Yankees won't be just as competitive, if not more competitive than last year, especially as you noted, with Garrett Cole coming back probably sometime shortly before the All-Star break, maybe June, maybe even earlier, maybe May. I think the Yankees, it's a competitive division with, you got the Blue Jays who are still going to be good next year.
Yes.
It's not going to be a walk in the park, but I still think the Yankees could potentially come out of the AL East.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
I don't hate that at all. I think the Blue Jays can be a very, very good team. I think Yankees, Blue Jays for that division at this point. I can't count out the Red Sox. They also added Caleb Durbin via trade today, former Yankee. So interesting stuff with baseball. No huge news, just kind of the WB stuff taking over with Lindor and how he's not going to play and the insurance because of his elbow procedure. So there's been some of that. Yankees, yeah, I think they're going to be an interesting team. I think they're very good. They're built for the regular season. But the question is the postseason with the New York Yankees. And do they get aggressive at the deadline? That remains to be seen. We've seen that in this town far too often, too passive around these trade deadlines. You got to be more aggressive, man. But yeah, we'll see. I think this was a really good episode. Excited for spring training to get going. We will have coverage. We will talk about any storylines that develop, Mets, Yankees, all around baseball as well, because we are all of the bases. We don't just talk about New York sports. We try to have that focus, but it's, in general, all encapsulating here on the podcast. This was episode 3. This was a great episode, hour plus. Can't guarantee these are always going to be an hour plus, but definitely a lot going on for sure. So I'm glad we got to a lot of this, and we'll continue to bring you guys episodes, hopefully 2 days a week. We're looking at Mondays and Thursdays as potentially the 2 days, but
maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more. That's certainly for sure. Looking to bring you guys content. We got next episode, hopefully some all-star break stuff. I got a top 15 NBA all-time that Ben and I are going to debate. He'll bring his top 15. I'll bring my top 15. We'll have a little fun with that. And then we'll just get ready for baseball. No more real football news, which is it's been a lot of football news this year. But yeah, this is another great episode, guys. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. We will get those social clips out throughout the week, and we'll get ready for the next episode here on All the Bases. Thank you all for watching. Dan Bartels, that's my producer, Ben Oppenheimer. Thank you, and we will see you soon. Ben, hit the music.